Good afternoon, everybody. Okay, thank you. How are you? Nice live shot. Good to see all of you. Happy Friday. It's great to be back with you. I want to provide an update. The Senate has already confirmed 8 of President Trump's exceptional cabinet nominees, including most recently Transportation Secretary Sean Duffy, as you of course know, EPA Secretary Lee Zeldin, and Interior Secretary Doug Burgum, who is scheduled to be sworn in later today. We expect the Senate to continue quickly confirming the remainder of President Trump's well-qualified nominees in the days ahead. Earlier this week in the East Room, the president proudly signed the Laken-Riley Act into law, surrounded by Laken's loving parents and sister. This common-sense bipartisan law mandates the federal detention of illegal aliens who are accused of theft, burglary, assaulting a law enforcement officer, and any crime that causes death or serious bodily injury, like the animal who murdered Laken-Riley in cold blood. This was the first piece of legislation President Trump proudly signed as the 47th President of the United States, and it will guarantee that Laken did not die in vain. As Laken's mother, Allison, tearfully said during the signing event, President Trump said he would secure our borders and that he would never forget about Laken, and he hasn't. He's a man of his word, and we trust that he will fight for the American people. Those are the words of Laken's mother, and we will never forget them. So to help lock up even more criminal illegal aliens, President Trump signed a memorandum this week to detain them at Guantanamo Bay. This action will expand the Migrant Operations Center at Naval Station Guantanamo Bay to full capacity to provide critical extra detention space for high-priority criminal illegals. Our brave ICE agents continue to arrest more and more of these types of individuals every day in communities across our country. And I have more updates for you. On January 27, 2025, ICE Chicago arrested a citizen of Guatemala who has been convicted of disturbing and sentenced to 24 months probation. On January 28, 2025, ICE Atlanta arrested a citizen of South Korea who has been convicted of 9 counts of possession conduct. On January 28th, ICE New York arrested a Mexican national previously charged by the state of New York for attempted murder and possession of a weapon and assault. And on January 28th, ICE Philly arrested a citizen of Mexico who has been convicted of. Our message is simple. If you are a criminal illegal alien, you will be arrested and deported. On another important matter, the nation's report card was released this week, and the news is not good. It showed that U.S. students had record low reading comprehension scores last year. It's National School Choice Week, and in part of the president's commitment to education, he just left a roundtable in the Roosevelt Room focused on this issue with leaders from across the country. The national report card showed that 70% of 8th graders were below proficient in reading, and 40% of 4th graders did not even meet the basic reading levels. This is completely unacceptable to the president, and he continues to take aggressive actions to address this education problem in our country. He signed an executive order this week prohibiting federal funding of the indoctrination of our children, including radical gender ideology and critical race theory in the classroom. The president believes American education should focus on cultivating patriotic citizens who are ready for the workforce. And this action will help get schools back on track and defend fundamental parental rights in education. The president also signed a school choice executive order expanding educational freedom and opportunity for families. And in lighter news, but in exciting news, after announcing our briefing room changes on Wednesday, this White House has received more than 10,000 submissions from individuals across the country who are eager to join all of you. We might have to make this room a little bit bigger to do that, who want to participate in our new media seat at a future briefing. So in this seat today, we have the Ruthless podcast. They humbly started by entertaining small audiences on Capitol Hill, but after 4 years, this program has become one of the most influential podcasts in America. They previously reached #1 on the charts and earned over 25 million downloads as they deliver political news with a humorous touch. The hosts are Josh Holmes, Michael Duncan, Comfortably Smug, and the man joining us today, John Ashbrook. So with that, I will take your question. The media out of touch? I think the media certainly is out of touch, and I think that's proven by a number of things, John. Number one, there was a New York Times poll that was released prior to President Trump's inauguration by the New York Times, which of course is a legacy media outlet, that showed that 83% of Americans support deporting the individuals that you mentioned, illegal immigrant criminals, especially those who have committed heinous crimes in the interior of our country. And I received a very actually interesting statistic on this front from ICE this week. 97% of the deportations that this administration has made thus far are of individuals who had a removal order from the previous administration, but were never removed from the interior of our country. So this shows that the previous administration was actually defying our laws, and all this administration is doing is simply following the laws, the immigration laws of this great country. Thanks for the question, John. Anything else?
No, that's it.
Okay, great. The president has already taken a very strong stance on this issue this week with the signing of his executive order, a few executive orders in this space. First, he made it the official policy of the federal government that there are only two, and we have directed all federal agencies to comply with that policy. As for congressional legislation to support the president's agenda in this space, and certainly end barbaric practice that the vast majority of Americans do not support Congress's efforts, as he has already made that very clear this week. Yes, so I can confirm that Rick Grinnell is in Venezuela today. I can confirm that Rick Grinnell is going to Venezuela, or is in Venezuela, with two immediate directives from the President of the United States. Number one, Rick Grinnell has been instructed to identify a place and ensure that repatriation flights of Tren de Aragua members, Venezuelan nationals who have broken our nation's laws, will land in Venezuela. As I said at this podium a few days ago, we expect every nation on this planet to cooperate with the repatriation of our citizens, and so Rick Grinnell is in Venezuela to ensure that can continue. And number two, Rick Grinnell is in Venezuela to ensure that all U.S. detainees in Venezuela are returned home. That's his mission, and I will provide a readout after that. I have not been part of those discussions. If they have, I am not sure if they have, but I won't speculate on potential pardons that may or may not happen. To my awareness, the answer is no. I saw that report, and it is false. I was just with the president in the Oval Office, and I can confirm that tomorrow, the February 1st deadline that President Trump put into place at a statement several weeks ago, continues. The president will be implementing tomorrow a 25% tariffs on Mexico, 25% tariffs on Canada, and a 10% tariff on China for the illegal fentanyl that they have sourced and allowed to distribute into our country, which has killed tens of millions of Americans. These are promises made and promises kept by the president.
The president, what decision he made there, or will there be exemptions at all offered under this?
I don't have an update or readout for you on the exemptions, but those tariffs will be for public consumption in about 24 hours tomorrow, so you can read them then. There were a lot of mysterious processes that my team and I have had to unravel over the past 2 weeks that were implemented by the previous White House, and in particular the previous press shop here. And so I can commit to a greater access and transparency, which I believe we already have, by ensuring that the 440 journalists whose credentials were revoked will be reinstalled. They will get their credentials if they wish to. We've also, of course, opened up a new seat to new media. And as far as open press events here at the White House, if we tell you it's open press, it's open press. When we say something is open press, it will mean it's open press. Well, to answer your question in one swoop, I will say that President Trump is committed to lowering taxes for Americans, cutting taxes for Americans. As for congestion pricing in New York, I do know that the president spoke with Governor Hochul about that. I don't have any, actions, so to speak, to read out for you on that issue today. Number two, when it comes to no taxes on tips and Social Security, the president has made it very clear to our allies on Capitol Hill that is a critical piece of this reconciliation package, and he expects that his tax cuts from 2017, which put a lot more money back into the American people's pockets, those must be implemented, and no tax on tips. The president is intent on delivering on that promise, and he will get it done. Americans who are concerned about increased prices should look at what President Trump did in his first term. He effectively implemented tariffs, and the average inflation rate during the first Trump administration was 1.9%. In fact, when President Trump left office, it was 1.4%. So So President Trump is going to do everything he possibly can to cut the inflation crisis that the previous administration imposed on the American people, and he will continue to effectively utilize tariffs.
If those tariffs do increase prices for Americans, will the administration reverse them?
That's a hypothetical question, and the president is intent on ensuring that he effectively implements tariffs while cutting inflation and costs for the American people. And, the media has this way of just looking at everything in a microscope rather than looking at the whole of government economic approach that this president is taking. He will effectively implement tariffs. He's also, as I just answered from Stephen's question, committed to tax cuts. He's also clearly committed, as evidenced by his executive orders, to unleashing the might of our energy industry, which we know will eventually drive down inflation, and all the other economic measures that this president has made will have a Trump incoming economic boom, just like we saw in our first term. I don't think so. I think the president is going to implement those tariffs tomorrow, and he will respond to Mr. Trudeau's comments in due time, I am sure. Well, the tariffs are incoming tomorrow on Canada, and the reason for that is because both Canada and Mexico have allowed an unprecedented invasion of illegal fentanyl that is killing American citizens and also illegal immigrants into our country. In fact, I have more language for you right here. Canada, Mexico, and China, which, as I mentioned, President Trump will implement a 10% tariff on China, have all enabled illegal drugs to pour into America. The amount of fentanyl that has been seized at the southern border in the last 2 years alone has the potential to kill tens of millions of Americans. And so the president is intent on doing this, and I think Justin Trudeau would be wise to talk to President Trump directly before pushing outlandish comments like that to the media. Yeah, the president based that statement on truth, because it is truth and it's fact, and it was relayed to him by the authorities who are overseeing the investigation into this horrific plane collision. And the president, as I said in my opening remarks, continues to be briefed on the collision by everybody across his cabinet, the Secretary of Transportation, the Secretary of Defense, the NTSB, who the commissioner there was in the Oval Office with him yesterday. Go ahead. Yeah, kudos to John Ratcliffe for revealing that truth and that fact to the American people. Many years too late, the Biden administration had a chance to let the American people know the truth about that, and for some reason, they chose not to. I also would just like to point out that several years ago, when I was working in this press shop and President Trump would take to this podium to brief the American people on COVID-19, he suggested that COVID very well may have came from a lab in Wuhan, China. And many members in this very room mocked him for that, said he was spewing conspiracy theories. He was not. We now know that to be the confirmable truth. It took many years for it to come out, but the president was right in this instance again. So I have not been present for Secretary Rubio's conversations with President Trump about the Panama Canal. I have been present for President Trump's own thoughts on the Panama Canal, and you've all seen them as well in his public statements that he has shown. He believes it's unacceptable that the canal is essentially run by the Chinese Communist Party. If you look at both ends of the canal, massive Chinese Communist Party linked companies run the canal. That's unfair to the American people, many of whom lost their lives many years ago building this canal. The American taxpayers are paying millions of dollars for the canal, and the president believes it's in our national interest as a nation for Secretary Rubio to go there and begin these discussions, and that's exactly why he's doing that.
In a short time.
The president was asked and answered this question yesterday, and he, as the Commander-in-Chief of the United States military, reserves the right to review troop deployments overseas at any point in time. Well, the president is intent on ensuring that we are increasing staffing at these agencies, and that's why he signed a very strong executive order on his second day in office, immediately terminating